Hey there, this is Renessa Boley Layne, and I want to welcome you to Creating Your Perfect Work. If you follow me, then you know it is my life's mission to encourage you to discover, design, and get highly paid to do work you love. Whether that means radically changing careers, launching a business, or bringing your big idea to life. And so today I'm super excited because we're going to be talking about the beauty of pausing, pivoting, and cultivating a purposeful network. And the dynamic woman that is sharing the screen with me today is named Megan Bizzuto. And Megan is the Vice President of Marketing and Member Experience at International Association of Women. And IAW, if you have not heard of IAW, is 45,000 members strong with over 100 chapters throughout the country. And Megan leads programs and initiatives that equip women with the support that they need to achieve their success in career, business, and leadership. She believes that when women work together and support one another, then awesome things can happen. And so I first met Megan, gosh, it was a couple years back, few years back, and I was speaking for an IAW event. And I think you were a contractor at the time, right? Or a consultant?
I was a consultant, yeah. Yep.
And I was super impressed by her. And then fast forward to now, I wanted to include IAW in this interview series. And so a part of the brilliance of doing this series and one of my purposes in doing it is that I wanted to bring organizations to you, introduce you to organizations that I thought could be just great places for you to find your tribe, great places to get support. And so IAW was one of those places. And I reached out to Megan for advice on, well, who can I interview? And, so on and so forth, who's in the leadership, blah, blah. And then she says, well, I've been, she said me she'd been promoted to vice president of marketing. And I was like, well, hello, like that. It came as no surprise because she's awesome at what she does. They're lucky to have her in this role. There's like nobody better for it. But as a result, I was like, I've got to get you on this interview series, and I've got to get you in front of these women. And so here's why it was so important for me to have her here. And so remember, we're talking about pausing, pivoting, and cultivating a purposeful network, right? So Megan has gone through the journey of pausing for 5 years in her career to have kids, with all of the insecurity and all of that can create. She has made radical pivots in her own career, which we'll talk about in a moment. And she's utilized her personal and her professional network to position herself to create work that she loves. And she'll tell you, like, unapologetically, I love what I do. And so it's great to hear from coaches and authors and thought leaders and all of that. But sometimes it is just refreshing to hear from somebody who's just walking their talk. And Megan walks her talk. And so my prayer is that this will, inspire you. It'll refresh you as you think about your own pauses and pivots or the ones that you desire to make, but that you're really going to be able to see yourself in her. Okay. And so with that, I just want to welcome you, Megan, to the conversation. We're so excited to have you here. And
thank you.
Sorry. Hold on. There we go. So thank you. We're excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So first question, the series is obviously about creating your perfect work. And when we talk about perfect work, I always want to reiterate, it's not about perfection. It's not about, perfect work comes with challenge. It comes with risk. It comes with doubt. It comes with all that. But perfect work is when you are doing the thing that you know you're born to do in a career business. It lights you up. You're contributing to the market in the ways that are meaningful to you. That is perfect work. And so when you think about the work that you're currently doing, how do you know that it's aligned to your perfect work?
So I think what sums it up for me is when I wake up in the morning, I am excited to dig in and start working. And I work from home, so there's not a lot of balance there's no real line between work and home. And it's not like I'm getting in my car and driving to the office, but I wake up excited about the women that I'm going to impact every single day. Mm-hmm. Combined with the fact that I get to use the skills that allow me to be creative and scratch the techie itch that I have. Mm-hmm. And the data, I like data, I like the analysis, but the marketing role allows me to be creative as well. Mm-hmm. And working with women and developing programs that are going to help them advance in their careers is really meaningful to me. Seeing this all come in, this all come together is what really gives me life, and it really makes me love what I do.
Yeah. And I love that you say it, because there's a combination of things that I think are important. And I ask that question often of people that I interview, because I want the audience to see, what does perfect work look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like when you watch someone's physiology? Like, you can tell when someone is genuine in what they're saying, or when they're
Mhm.
just saying what they think you should say, right? I love my job. You know,
Yeah.
like, your
Yeah.
body and your physiology doesn't even match. But she's talking about the combination of the skills that she has, even those skills that seem juxtaposed, like the techie side and the creative side, like being able to really match the skills that she does well, the things that she really enjoys, and then the meaning behind it. Like, so those are things that you start to look for when you're trying to define what perfect work looks like for you. Is it meaningful? Is it fulfilling? Because you could be using your skills against something that you couldn't give a flip about, in which case that might not necessarily be perfect work for you, right? But I
Yep.
remember in an earlier conversation, Megan, you said that as a young woman in your career, you had no confidence, which I find really fascinating, and that there were so many things that you wish you had known when you first got out of college, right? Tell us more about that and how it showed up for you.
Yeah, so I think it probably wasn't that I had no confidence, but I had low confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggled with putting myself out there, speaking up in meetings. I was happy to show up, I was happy to do the work, but I never had a very loud voice. I was never the one raising my hand. I would kind of volunteer on the backside to do projects, but I was never speaking up in front of the senior leadership team.
Mm-hmm.
There's two scenarios that I've really held on to. The first was very early in my career, and I walked into a meeting. I was doing a 4-week long project, and one of the guys, I walked into a room. It was a technical review, so there were 10, I'll say, middle-aged men in the room with me who had just graduated from college, and one of them questioned my experience and kind of this, what could you possibly contribute to this? And that stayed with me for a long time. That thought of, he has no idea who I am and where I've come from, but he's assuming, based on my gender, my race, my age, everything, that I know nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it it gave me this feeling of, maybe he's right, maybe I don't know as much as I know, and I held on to that for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
um, Chance encounter, I was back in that location quite a ways after that, and I saw the same man, and he actually came up to me and said he was going to offer me a job because he was so impressed with the way I
Interesting.
carried myself. So I thought, wow, I really had no confidence, but I guess I was wrong. um, the second scenario that I think about came years later and was more around the harassment area, where I had somebody in the workplace that made me feel uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
um, not not so out forthcoming that it was like he was doing gross things, but some inappropriate comments. He would kind of stand at my desk and look at me, and I didn't have the confidence to speak up at the time. And now I look back at that and it's like, oh wow, I'm sure he was doing it to other women as well.
Mm-hmm.
And why couldn't I stand up for myself? What was holding me back
Mm-hmm.
from bringing this to light?
Mm-hmm.
And so confidence is a big thing for me. I mean, even still, I have moments where I second guess myself. There's doubt in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it's something that all women can work on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a big part of our programming as well, is
No, absolutely.
confidence.
I think there are some people who are far more confident than others, right?
Yep.
There are some people who perhaps are more confident than they should be, or not than they should be, more confident than um, their output would suggest they should be.
Yep. Yep.
um, but I think a lot of times it's being aware of where your weak spot or your blind spot might be, so that then you can question the assumptions that you make about yourself in those moments, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so it's interesting. I had an interview with Gloria Felt, and she was recalling a situation where she has a tremendous amount of fear, and she was talking about having to work through that fear. And she had a lot of opportunities to work through that fear. So the thought would be that you had all these opportunities unwarranted that you had to step through this, you would think that she was good to go. And she's like, I'm still scared of it. Like, I'm still as scared of it today as I was then. She's like, but the difference is now I know, I'm completely confident that I can walk through it.
Yep.
And so those in those moments where we might get lack confidence or whatnot, you build a muscle that says, despite the fear and despite the being nervous, I know that I can deliver on this. I know that I can show up for this client. I know that I can produce, and
Yep.
that just kind of allows you to walk through and dance with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But she was like, it did not go away. It does not go away. And I think sometimes we have to be okay with things, just the thorn in your flesh, not necessarily going away.
Yep.
So this whole series is about redesigning your success, and we're talking about pivots. And so you started out in accounting and finance.
I did.
So I'm curious, because that's not what you do now, not at all.
No,
So
no.
why finance, and how did that even evolve to
Yeah.
something else?
So I always loved numbers.
Mhm.
And so my degree is in accounting and information systems. And I thought, okay, well, numbers, this is good. Finance is interesting. So I was drawn to the data and the analysis. Um, and I loved what I did. I was good at what I did, but there was no passion there. I
Mhm.
didn't wake up every day excited about the products I was supporting, or that. I mean, you can't really get creative with forecasting, right? There's a little bit.
Every accountant and finance person says that. They're like, look, the number is.
The number is, yeah. And so you can do some things with strategy and forecasting, but at the end of the day, it's all numbers. It's a spreadsheet. And I was promoted a few different times. I worked for different companies, and I didn't feel like the path was mine.
Mhm.
I felt like every time I looked at the leadership team, it was like, oh, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And so it I started my career there, and I think it's given me a foundation that's really important, right? Being able to analyze numbers and look at a forecast and understand budgets is a great skill to have.
Yeah.
And it has really supported me through the rest of my career.
Mhm.
But I had been in finance roles for about 10 years. I found out I was pregnant, and I had this kind of, oh shit moment. Like, okay, I'm commuting. I worked in New York City at the time, so I had an hour commute each way. My husband had a crazy job. And I thought, how am I going to support commute, crazy work schedule, having a baby? I don't know what's this is overwhelming. And because I didn't love the job, it was easy to kind of say, maybe it's time to take a break. Maybe I need to figure out something else.
Mhm.
Um, and that led to my great pause, which at the time we had just found out we were expecting our first daughter. And my husband called me at work one day to tell me that he had been offered a job in Shanghai.
Wow.
And we had always kind of talked about spending some time overseas. I was not in love with the idea of having a baby overseas, so we timed it. I basically said, as long as this means I don't have to work, then let's do it. Financially, we were able to support it. So it was going to be 2 years of living in Shanghai, and I would get to be home with the baby. And in 2 years, I'd be able to go back and pick up somewhere. But it wasn't intentionally done as a pivot. It wasn't even an intentional pause. It just kind of happened that way.
Mhm. Mhm.
Our 2 years in Shanghai turned into 5 years. We moved to Dubai after 2 years in Shanghai,
Wow.
another 3 years in Dubai, another child. um, and and so I think the 5 years turned into a big pause.
Yeah.
And when we came back to the US, I had this desire to work, but I didn't know where to go. I didn't know how to get back into the workforce because I didn't want to go back to what I was doing before.
Mhm.
And so I kind of sat on it for a while. We got readjusted. We had a third child once we moved home. And then one of the things that I had done when we were living overseas was I had a blog, and I used social media to stay in touch with my family. And when we came back, my parents had their own business, so I started helping them with some of their marketing. And then I met a digital marketing consultant who was looking for support, so I joined his team and just really started from the ground up in terms of getting exposure to different types of digital marketing.
Mhm.
And I really fell in love with it. and managed to carve my path from there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there's a few things that I'd love to unpack from your story that I think are great teachable points for folks that are listening. And so the one thing I could relate to, you were talking about in your finance role, you're sitting around the table, you're looking at folks, you're looking at people that are up the ladder, and you're like, that's not really where I want to be. And that's a clue, guys. That maybe it's not the role for you. And I remember when I was doing management consulting work, and I was young in my career, and I had a mentor. They had given me a female mentor who was a principal in the company. And so I was really grateful for that mentorship and all that. But I remember very vividly after one of our one-on-one meetings, coming out of that meeting thinking, I do not want to do what she does.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I was attracted to kind of the glitz and the glamour of the briefcase and the high heel shoes and all the travel and the expense account and all that kind of stuff that was kind of cool, that really isn't that cool after the first like 30 days. I just remember thinking, I don't want to do there's nothing up there that I want.
Yep.
And so then I was like, well, where do I go from here? What do I do? Because that was my path. It looked all pretty and sizzly, and that's kind of what I created an identity around. And so I just say that for those of you who are at places where you're like, I'm not sure and I'm confused, you're not confused. If you can't future pace and see yourself where the ladder's going, you may not know where you're going to go next or what you should be doing next. But I think it becomes important to be honest that this is not the path for me. Because at least when you can be honest about that truth, doesn't mean that you have to quit, doesn't mean that you're hanging out your shingle, it doesn't mean you're doing something drastic, but you are making a quality decision so that you can start to ask different questions, right?
Yep.
And so that's something to certainly take from her conversation. The second thing that I think was really interesting is that while you were away and you were abroad and you were technically, stay-at-home mom, it wasn't like you were not growing and you weren't developing.
Yep.
And I think that becomes really important as well, because some of the folks that are listening here, you're coming off of sabbaticals, you're coming off of pauses, whether they were intentional or whether they were accidental and life kind of happened and what you thought was going to be a few months ended up being a few years. Like there's lots of women that are listening in that situation. There's value in what you've invested in. And or if you haven't invested, let's start investing in some skills and some things, because you never know, the very skills that you started to learn and to dig deep in are skills that you're using now as the VP in this role. And had you not had those preparations before, this opportunity would never have even opened up. And I don't want to steal your thunder about it, but that's kind of the way I see it from the outside looking in.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think looking back, I can see there were lots of things that I did that were not even necessarily intentional, but they led me on this path, and they've equipped me with skills and connections that have allowed me to develop in this way. But honestly, it wasn't very intentional at the time.
But here's the thing. Some of us are blessed with foresight. Like if you have a clarity around, because I often will say design with the end in mind, right? If you know what your end is, then you back up to then figure out which opportunities or which decisions line up to the desired end. Sometimes we don't have that level of clarity. Sometimes it's like driving in a fog where you just see, 5 feet ahead of you. And then all you know is what to do with the 5 feet that are ahead of you. And then when you get 5 feet further, you're going to have a little more 5 feet of visibility. All you did was follow the breadcrumbs of what was interesting to you at the time,
right?
Or what opportunity presented at the time that made sense.
Yep.
And I think there's a level of faith and trust in your process that if you're willing to do that, and if you're willing just to pay attention to those moments and follow those little glitches of, you put the puzzle pieces together sometimes in reverse.
Right.
But had you not done any one of those inklings, there would be a piece missing, and you may not be doing the work that you do now.
Right.
Is so fulfilling, right?
Yep.
So the reason why you're on this interview is because you were accidentally found your perfect work, but but it was all very much by design for you.
Yep.
It was you being obedient to the things that you just saw in the moment
Right.
and
Yep.
really going with that. Tell us a little bit about how you felt about the pause, though, because when you came back into the market, and this is something that I think a lot of women might struggle with when they're, oh, I have this gap in my resume kind of thing.
Yep.
Was that an issue for you? Was it not an issue for you? Kind of like, how
So,
did you think about the value you thought you could bring having
right.
had formal,
Right.
experience for that period of time?
Yeah. So the pause, when I first started back working, I actually started as a consultant. So I ended up starting my own little marketing consultant business because I needed flexibility. The
Mm-hmm.
thought of going to a full-time role where I was managing other people and in an office with three small kids at home and a husband who traveled, it felt like too much for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I started consulting, and it was nice because I could pick my own jobs and I could set my own schedule, and it didn't really impact me from a gap perspective because the people I was supporting, they weren't really aware of the gap.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't really become an issue until I started looking at full-time jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was more of my issue than anybody else's issue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, IAW, I started as a consultant, and I've really proved my way to the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
I stepped in to this position because of the experience they've had with me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they may not even know that I have a 5-year gap on my resume. So that leads me to believe that a lot of it is my own opinion of that gap. And I think that anybody who takes time off, you're not sitting at home doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Even even if you're volunteering, if you're committing time anywhere, if you're raising children, you're learning skills. Those are things that you can apply no matter where you come back into. And it's really, I think, finding an organization or a company that supports where you've been and what you've done and what that experience is.
Mm-hmm. So a couple things I'd love to drill down on. You decided to do consulting first when you
Mhm.
re-entered the marketplace because you said, you know, I got 3 kids, I got this going on, got that going on, don't think I can handle all that. And I think for a lot of women, that's a difficult decision to make. I think it's a different, I, and I think we had this conversation offline. I think women have different levels of capacity. Like
Mhm.
there's some women, because I'm telling you, my husband likes this show called The Titans or something like that. It's this kind of rah superwoman, Superman show that's hosted by The Rock. And so everybody's like cut and ripped and has endurance like crazy. And so I'm watching the show with him, and there's this woman on the show, beautiful woman. She has 3 daughters. She's a gynecologist. She gets up at 4:30 every morning to like train for this Titan competition, like type Iron Manish, blah blah blah. She's ripped and yoked, and I mean just the whole nine. And she's beautiful, and she's like the whole thing. And I was like, I got my one kid, and I'm like, oh no, and so as I think about baby number 2, I'm like, oh no, and so but I can honestly say that there was some judgment that I had for myself about, well, of course you should be able to do all of that. And while
Mhm.
I know I would be a great mother, I would be a great mom to however many kids, I questioned whether or not I would be a happy mom. And I
Yep.
questioned whether or not I would be a fulfilled mom
Yes.
because I just thought I have dreams and ambitions in the business space I have, like this would just have me burning both sides of the oil. But the issue was, but there's all these other women that have this capacity. Like, why can't you just suck it up, Renessa, and get it together? And this lady, she's 4:30 every morning. She's a GYN. Like, what's the problem? But I love that you were like, I think I can do all that.
Yep.
Not just
Yeah, I
one.
yeah, I think knowing your capacity and not taking on too much, because I'm the type that if I say yes, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to sacrifice somewhere else to get it done because I'm not going to show you what's going on behind the scenes so that I can get everything done. But
Mm-hmm.
it might be less time with my kids. It might be that I'm skipping the gym. It might be that I'm not eating well. I'm not sleeping enough. And so for me, I felt like there's different levels of supermom, right? There's the, and what I have the capacity to do was 15 to 20 hours a week of work. And so
Mhm.
by starting as a consultant, I was able to navigate that
Mhm.
easily. And the consulting also gave me the flexibility of, you're not fixed to a schedule of being in an office. I could work from wherever I wanted, and
Mhm.
nobody could see if I was showing up in my yoga pants or going straight to the gym after, or
Mhm.
had a kid sitting next to me on the couch. So that was what I could handle at that point in time.
Got it. And so I hope that just this dialogue, if you're listening, gives you permission to really be honest about your capacity. Because just because somebody else can do it, bless them, doesn't mean that you can do it. You probably could, but doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you want to do. And if it's not what you want to do, that's okay too. And so again, my hope is that it releases some of the judgment that you may be having around all the shoulds that you think you should have as a woman, versus what do I really want, and what I value, and what's most important to me, so that as you're redesigning your success, you're redesigning it from a place of authenticity, as opposed to resentment and burnout and all of that other kind of stuff.
Right.
When you decided to do the whole consulting bit, again, you're coming from being overseas for a good chunk of time. How did you even figure out, I'm going to hang out my shingle and go consult and like actually get a client? Like, how did you go
Yeah.
from there to in business?
Yeah, so I did a lot of blogging and social on my own to keep us connected when we lived overseas. I had supported my parents' business, so I had a little bit of experience. Somebody, I was living in Connecticut at the time, and somebody posted on a Facebook group saying, "Hey, I'm looking for a social media consultant specifically to help with Pinterest and Facebook." And I thought, "Oh, I can do that. I could do that." And so I linked up with him, and then he got me introduced to blogging and SEO and so many other things. We moved from Connecticut to Massachusetts, and I I didn't have any clients at the time, so I left all of his clients with him and said, "I'll figure out what I'm doing when we get there." I was out one night at an event, and this is where I get into networking, because I just casually mentioned to somebody that I was a marketing consultant, and she said, "Oh, I have a friend. She's a dermatologist, and she needs a website and she needs a blog. I'm going to connect you guys." And
Mhm.
there I had my first client. And every client, I never did any marketing for myself, because all of my clients came through my network, and it was all just referrals through friends or through professional organizations that I built a client base.
Wow. So let's talk about that, because I think that that's really important. Um, it's really important. So how do you like cultivate a purposeful network? Because your network is what got you into IAW. Your network is has opened, got you word of mouth experience, clients that
Yep.
people have spent all kinds of dollars on marketing and advertising and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So before we get into the do's and all that, what's your philosophy on networking, on your personal network? Like, is it something that you've always just embraced and been open? Is it something where you shied away from? Like, tell us
Yeah.
your
So
positioning as it relates to
I've
network.
always been open to networking, but never, early in my career, I didn't look at it as sort of something you had to have. It just kind of happened, and I'd show up at events every so often. Since I've developed this idea that your network is really, it can be powerful, right? If you build a purposeful network, it can be powerful. Um, I see this every day, where if by showing up authentically and being yourself, giving to others,
Mm-hmm.
you can create power around you, and you give that impression of being helpful and showing up for others, and then they're likely to be helpful and show up for you.
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm a strong believer that you really have to show up authentically. I often use the example of the person who walks into an event and just throws their business cards on the table with no introduction, no conversation, just, "Here, take my business card."
Mm-hmm.
And that turns me off, because do I need your business card? Are we meant to connect? Are we meant to have business together? I'm all about building genuine connections, whether it's personal connections or professional, showing up in spaces where you can have conversation, contribute to the conversation, but
Mm-hmm.
also ask when you need support.
Mm-hmm.
And truly believe that by supporting your network and giving back to it, it will in time give back to you.
Absolutely. So, are you deliberate? Like, so because you make a distinction about a purposeful network.
Yep.
So, for you, how would you define a purposeful network?
So I think there is some deliberate intention there. I'm intentional about social media groups that I join and contribute to. I think that especially in the current environment where we can't be attending in-person events, there's Facebook groups, there's LinkedIn groups, there's other networking sites where you can connect and find support digitally, create these relationships online.
Mm-hmm.
I'm intentional because of my job at IAW. I'm intentional about meeting other women and showing up in places where women tend to hang out.
Mm-hmm.
But I think whenever I walk into an event or a room of person, I believe that you can network anywhere, right? It's not just about being at a professional networking event.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at your alumni groups, you can look at your high school group, you can look at your family, you can look at your groups of friends, the PTO. There's networks all around you, and you never know who you're going to be talking to and how they might be able to connect you to an opportunity, to a resource, to another person.
Mm-hmm.
So always kind of having in the back of your mind, paying attention to those signs and the places people have been, the people they know, and being intentional about how you set those conversations up.
I really um, I like the way that you framed the idea that there's networks all around you. Because I
Yep.
do think that the mistake that many people make is that when you think about building your network, you think about networking, think about going to this event, you think about going having the little hello sticker. Hello, my name is.
Yeah. And I have a hard time with those events. So I'm an introvert. This was a big deal when we lived overseas because you're constantly having to introduce yourself and walk into these rooms of people where you don't know anybody.
Mhm.
And so when you say traditional networking event, I kind of get like, oh, I don't know. I know that they're helpful, but that's not where I like to do my networking.
And so the reason I bring it up is because I think there's some freedom in even redefining what it means to build a network and redefining what networking looks like. Because
Yep.
there are certain networks for all of us, whether you're introverted or not, or whatever your interests are, there are certain fishing holes that you feel very comfortable swimming in. People
Yep.
that do things that you like to do, that you're interested in, book club, this, that, or just your neighborhood, next door forum kind of thing,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
once you figure that out about yourself, it's about then being really purposeful about connecting to those people, getting to know them, and finding out how you can serve them. As an
Right.
example, I have a friend who's actually my daughter's godparents, and I've known them for 20 years, 25 years, however long, and they, like, no matter where they live, like every neighborhood they live, they know everybody. Like everybody. And so we went to visit them last year sometime. And so we stayed at their home. And so we're just sitting outside, shooting the breeze. And literally, the guy's like, and across the street is Rob so and so, and he's been there for 15 years. And then next to us, they just renovated. And then over here, like he's literally like he knew all of the people in the periphery, like he knew something about them. And
Yep.
I'm thinking, I don't know, I know the neighbor next door, and that's it.
Yep.
And so the bottom line is, those are the people that they would see every day when they're coming home from work, from their commute, and it was nothing for them to stop before they beelined it to the door,
Yep.
say hello, ask how the day was, do you have kids? Like, just spend that time to connect with them, because
Yep.
literally they could go to any one of the 8 neighbors that were around them on every corner and be able to ask for something or request something. And this particular guy, literally, he just got tapped for an executive director position for a cybersecurity company. And the reason they wanted him is because he has such a robust network. And they were like, this quality that you bring to us is an asset because this could actually help us build our
Right.
membership.
Yep.
Now, he's a lot more extroverted and stuff than I tend to be. His wife is a little more introverted, but it's not about personality type. It's about, do you care enough about people to
Yep.
just see how they're doing, check in, and figure out how you can serve
Yep.
and do it in whatever way is natural to you. But I think it just sets us free when we think about, you've got PTA, you have things with your kids, you have places where you're just naturally gonna be there. You have your commute, you have places, it's no extra time, net time.
Right.
Not like you're doing anything else. So I think
Right.
that's a really powerful point.
Yep.
Really powerful point. So tell us though, how did you end up getting, how did the network support you into this particular role?
So my entry point into IAW was it was just over 3 years ago, and I was doing marketing consulting at the time. I had gotten really into optimization work specifically, and we were visiting some friends, and I don't even know that I knew this woman worked in marketing at the time, but she asked, "Oh, what have you been doing? Are you working?" And I shared, and she was like, "No way. I'm a VP of marketing and I hire agencies that are really, really expensive. And I bet you could do that work better. So the next time I need somebody, I'm calling you and I'll see if you're interested." And so I worked with this woman at she moved roles and I moved with her, but that was my entry point into IAW. And so what started as just a conversation of, "Oh, hey, what are you up to? What are you up to these days?" turned into 10 to 15 hours of consulting work, and from there into a full-time position.
Yeah.
So it really was who I knew.
It really was. So, it's who you know, and then the willingness to be able to talk about what you do.
Yep.
And I think a lot of us are either afraid to talk about what we do or don't want to talk about what we do.
Yep.
And not that your entire conversation needs to be around what you do, and especially if you're at a place where you're looking to pivot or you're looking to redesign your success. I'm a big proponent. You don't talk about where you're at, you talk about where you want to go. Like, why are you talking about the analyst job that you hate? Well, I'm an analyst at ABC company. Well, who wants to, you don't want to even be known for that.
Yep.
Talk about the place, talk about where you're going.
Yep.
And I remember I had a friend who she hated her job, and she wanted to be a vocalist. She wanted to sing. Now her background was totally different. She was like straight corporate. And so I was like, well, then why do you keep telling people that you are this senior director at XYZ company? Only in part because the title sounded good and it makes you sound like you're super important, but you hate the job. So instead of telling people that you want to be, that you're this or that, why don't you tell them that you're a vocalist? Because you do sing. And she was, and she was singing with the choir, and she was really like investing in her voice and all of that kind of stuff. I was like, get your business card. That's what you give. Like, you're a vocalist. That's what you do. A, it's much more interesting, but B, that's what you want the market to know you for. That's what the opportunities that you want to come your way. So it doesn't matter if you are 100% all in. That could be your side gig, your side hustle, or even just the aspiration. Start speaking and showing up in the market the way that you want to be, because then literally fast forward maybe a few months or whatnot, here she was doing her first solo gig at like a local club. She still had her day job. She was doing it wasn't like she was going off to record an LP or something. Not that there even are ever even LPs. I totally dated myself. Not whatever.
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not that she was going to, make a major recording or whatnot, but it was a big deal to be able to go and have her own solo gig in a local club. And part of it came from stepping into the space. And so as you think about networking, a lot of times we are like, please don't ask me what I do. Like, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you're not sure what you want. Like, so the first, get clear about what you want to be, and then be unapologetic and unashamed about declaring who you are in the marketplace and or declaring the value you want to add, or even just declaring about the thing you want to create. Because you might want to figure out how to get from here to there. And instead of talking about the job you hate or whatever, talk about, well, you know what, I'm really looking to redesign my career to do X.
Yep.
And then now you might have a partner that you just met who totally is all excited about helping you think about how you can create that thing.
Yep.
Do you see what I mean? And so those are authentic ways to then leverage the power of other people who might be like, oh my gosh, you know what? My friend so-and-so does that. I'm sure they'd be willing to talk to you about how they got there.
Yep.
How they did X, Y, Z. But if you don't open your mouth and say it and put the ego to the side about how you think you should be seen, then you miss that opportunity to do that. Because that's exactly how Megan ended up getting her foot into the door at this company, doing work she really enjoyed, and then you fast cycle and now she's VP of the role. With her 5-year pause and her, you know, not having a degree in the space and all these other things that we create as barriers for why we can't create the work that we love.
Yep.
Make sense? So for you, Megan, are there any parting words of wisdom or advice that you would have for women, either around their pause, their pivots, or creating and cultivating their, you know, their purposeful network, that you'd be like, hey, these are the things that me that I would suggest?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to building your network, the 3 things I would say is reiterating that networking can happen anywhere. It's not just at a professional networking event. Always be authentic in who you are. It's not about showing up and just dropping a link. Build those conversations, actually connect with people, and give to your network. Don't just show up expecting that people are going to support you every step of the way without you offering some support as well.
Mm-hmm. How do you give? Like, I think that's I'd like to park there. Like, how? Because I think it's important to be intentional. Because if you don't know what somebody needs, or if you don't know where they're going, if you don't know their plan, then you don't know that you have something that you can give. So if we're not intentional about that dig, we're shot. So how do you?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think when you know where someone's going and what they're doing, it's easier to give. I use my entrepreneur friends as examples where I know they're building businesses. I likely can't financially support every single business, but I can comment on their social media posts. I can leave them reviews. I can do things. I can recommend them. I can share their links. I can do things online that are going to give them exposure. And that's me not giving much, right? If it comes out in conversation that somebody's looking for a job, or if they're trying to build a business, or they have a specific question, I reach to my network of who might be able to help you. If I don't have a specific resource, maybe I know somebody that does. But giving through those conversations. So when you're having a conversation with somebody, asking them what they need. And this is something that we do at IAW at some of our events, where we have a session called collaborate. It's collaboration. We call it a few different things, but it's a collaboration activity where we say, what is your ask? What do you need right now? Mm-hmm. And people have the ability. And it's amazing when you're in the room and this is happening in person and somebody says, oh, I'm looking for a connection for this. And you see these hands go up, like, I got you. I'll follow up with you after this. And so making sure that you're paying attention to what other people need.
Yeah. I want to punctuate that point, because it is about paying attention.
Yep.
Because it's in little ways. To your point, you don't have to buy everybody's product or this or that. But we all know people who've written a book, or they, you know, are opened a restaurant, or, you know, something that they've done, that just taking a moment, and you might even have to read the entire book, read a chapter or two, pick in the table of contents, read a chapter that you thought was meaningful, and then literally go to Amazon and write a review for them. You know, a genuine, authentic review of value. Like, that stuff matters, right? Yes. It's little things that you can do. Comment on somebody's post, share that post. You know, those kinds of things really, really make a difference. And people remember the folks and take notice of the folks who've supported them.
Right.
And so, and especially if you're trying to get in with someone who might be at a higher level than you or that you don't have a real relationship with, like thought leaders and those kinds of things, read their book, post it, send them an email or send them, post it on Twitter and say, hey, I really loved your book. I wrote an Amazon review on it. You don't have to know that person from Adam, but those people pay attention to their followers. And so that could be an opportunity to, like, for instance, this is not the first interview summit that I've done. It's actually the second summit. I still remember the names of the ladies who like literally would be posting about the interviews that they saw on LinkedIn, or they would send something to their friends, or they would tag me in something. I've never met them or anything, but I bet you if they came knocking on my door saying, hey, do you have a connection for X, Y, and Z, I'd be so much more inclined to do it because they've already poured into me, right? But they don't know me, but they have poured in. So when we're developing a purposeful network, we do have to be deliberate about looking for ways to serve people as opposed to thinking it's just going to land on our doorstep, because it just doesn't happen that way. But you can also, right, ask. Like, Megan and I can be in a conversation and I might be able to say, so what's next for you? Like, what are you working on? Like, what's the next big thing that you want to do? Is there something I can help you with? Is there something that I should keep in mind for you? That's usually what I ask people. Is there something that I should keep in mind if I meet or if I come across that I should think Megan? Like, ask people that question. And you might not have a give right then, but next week you could be someplace and come across the perfect person that now you can go and make a deposit into that relationship. And then when you need something, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be like, oh, that was so thoughtful. What can I do for you? And then you better have something in mind. Otherwise, you just wasted your opportunity. Always have an ask in mind.
Yes.
But this has been super helpful. So share with us a little bit about IAW. And I want people to know, if y'all don't know about IAW, you need to know about IAW. So share a little bit about IAW and about the gift that you're offering people that are listening to this interview.
Absolutely. So the International Association of Women is a women's networking platform. We host in-person and online events. We do lots of programming and resources for women to develop their careers, to grow a business, support work-life balance initiatives. We also offer online skills development courses and exclusive membership discounts. So my special offer for viewers today is you can save 25% off our annual membership pricing. That gets you access to all the events, all the programming, everything online. And the link for that is info.iawomen.com/perfect work.
Yep. And
there's a form there.
We'll have it down here at the bottom.
Awesome.
So you can click. Don't worry about it. It's here.
Great. Awesome. Yeah. So submit your information there and you'll get an email from me that has that coupon code with more information about IAW.
Perfect. So I'm going to put my plug in for IAW as well, because again, I profiled organizations that I think are just a great force for good for women. And if you're looking to build your tribe and you need support and you want to create a support system around you that helps catapult your success, this is one of those organizations. Again, 45,000 members strong, which means that you're connecting with some really great folks. And in fact, I have a couple of current clients that are also IAW members, and they are awesome and dynamic and really incredible women, which in my opinion is reflective of the larger pool of folks that the organization supports. So if you are in business and if you're an entrepreneur, it's a good opportunity for you to be able to connect and showcase what you do, because it could actually be a nice source of revenue or client base for you. If you're in a career, it's a great place for you to be able to network and create opportunities and give as well. So if you're inclined to learn more about them, they run an awesome ship, and this one over here is towards the helm of that, and she's doing some great stuff. And so I couldn't recommend it highly enough. But with that said, I will, on behalf of Megan and myself, wish you all the success and happiness in the world. We wish you great big dreams in amazing ways, and we wish that you get highly paid doing what you love. So with that, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.